So maybe we need to go through some of these different dreams. So we saw the one where it's a statue. Babylon was a head of gold. So this is in Daniel chapter 2. We've got the Medes and the Persians are pictured of the breast and arms were silver. So as we go up, it gets more inferior. So he had the most power. Whatever he said went. He didn't have to ask anybody what to do about governing. He was the government. So when you get up to here, they were split. They had the Medes and the Persians. And then when we get up to Alexander, so he's brass now, less valuable than silver. And he was the thighs in this statue. Then we have Rome pictured as legs of iron. And we see then that New Rome was iron and clay. Pictured as 2 feet with 10 toes. So remember, the Roman Empire actually developed an eastern leg. So we have the Rome was the capital to the west. Constantinople in Turkey was the eastern capital. So I would imagine it'll be like that. There'll probably be 5 western countries and 5 eastern countries, which comprise this new Rome. And then it shows Jesus as a stone mountain that crushes all these, and they disappear completely. So it crushes the one that's around, and then everything else just kind of dissolves. We won't even remember those anymore because Jesus is ruling. That's all we care. No more Gentile nations ruling over Jerusalem. So in Daniel 7, we've got the same thing. Babylon is then pictured as a beast. That's a lion. Then the Medes and the Persians are pictured as a bear. One side was higher because the Persians grew to be the dominant player there. We had Greece was a leopard, so it moved with lightning speed to attack. It had 4 wings. These were the 4 generals that helped lead Alexander the Great's army. Are pictured as different horns, so they're notable horns. These wings, when Alexander dies, they get their own power. So a horn is when you're got governing authority. In this beast thing here, we just got a terrible beast, and who knows what it looks like. So it's not any particular animal. It's got iron teeth. That's Rome. We've got the New Rome is pictured with 10 horns, and that's what we just saw in this thing also. Then there's going to be another little horn, another governing authority. It's going to come to power with just a few people. So it's going to start small but gain control over the whole world. And then Jesus pictured as the Son of Man coming in Daniel 7. So Daniel 8, we got another one. Well, instead of starting in Babylon this time, we start with the Medes and the Persians. Pictured as 2 horns, 2 sources of power. One of them's higher, one of them's stronger, just like here. Greece had a notable horn. That was his great big horn. He had huge power. Here, they still have power over the whole earth, but now it's 4 different. It's divided. His kingdom was divided up into 4 different areas. And so the king of the south, or Egypt, was one of those. The king of the north is another one of those. So we're not. The Bible never really mentions the king of the east or the king of the west. It's always just these 2. It doesn't mention anything about Rome in this. We just go directly then to this little horn that comes out of the kingdom of Greece, this king of the north. And then we've got the Prince of Princes. So this is where Daniel starts calling the spiritual powers princes. So we've got Jesus as the Prince of Princes. He controls everything, but there's a prince of all these different countries. Daniel 11, again, starts with the Medes and the Persians. Greece, it just names these, king of the south, king of the north. Again, jumps to the king of the north. Most of this is just very brief. We've got probably a couple 100 years of these 2, and then it's hard to say really where it divides up from the past to the future. So everybody's got their own point of view on where in the book of Daniel, in chapter 11, that splits up as to what's future and what is history. Then we go to the book of Revelation. So we see New Rome can't form until 144,000 Jews become Christians. They're sealed with the Holy Spirit. The new Greek king of the north. So he's the one that comes up out of the abyss that we see in the 5th chapter. And so he's talked about with the 5th. Then he raises that 200 million man army with the 6th trumpet. So as soon as that trumpet comes from the Euphrates River, as soon as that army comes from the Euphrates River down to Jerusalem and takes away the sacrifice, that's when the 3.5 years of Great Tribulation starts. Chapter 12 in the book of Revelation, it's got the same picture, a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. Here I think that the crowns were on the heads. That just meant that one of these heads was in power at that time. You'll see that that crown goes from the head to the horns there in different, depending on which chapter you're looking at. So when it gets to be on the horns, that's when this new Roman Empire is in charge. Basically, these last three are pretty much the same, only here we did see that there's actually going to be an eighth. So it's you see a picture with 7 and 10, and all of a sudden we got an eighth. Well, where does that come from? Well, it's one that came from these, and it's coming back. So just like the Roman Empire came back, God talks about 4 empires, just 1, 2, 3, and 4. So he doesn't talk about these necessarily because they all come out of this. He doesn't talk about this one because, he doesn't talk about this one because it came out of that. So there's a lot of a recapitulation. So there's things that existed in history that are also going to exist in the future. Hope that makes sense. If you get this chart, you can look at it forever and you can see. Most commentators do. They say, well, Egypt and Assyria were powers before Babylon. Well, that's fine, they were. So we start with Egypt. They were a power when Israel wasn't really a nation. They were a family that had to go down to Egypt because of a famine in a time when Joseph was second in charge and he stored up all the wheat. They came back as a nation, but Egypt was done at that time. Assyria, they came down and they did. They wiped out Israel, but Israel was split at that time, and they only captured the northern kingdom, so they didn't get the southern kingdom. That doesn't fit in this chart either. These are world powers that have to do with the Jews in Jerusalem, and that starts at Babylon. And Daniel is quite clear on that. There's nothing down below here. So when you start counting these 7 heads up, start with Babylon, and then you can see people leave out the king of the north and the king of the south. Those are what is mentioned in the Bible. That's why I chose those. So I think that's a better way to go.